All right, back on the Young Turks. Michael Shure joins us again from Cleveland, where we had the first presidential debate. I want to go to him in a second, but first I'm going to go to you guys as usual. Dragonfly makes a good point. This is all in the member section. What hurts most is that the whole world sees this. I didn't think about it that way. That's a great point. God, the rest of the world looks at this and they got to be thinking, man, America's in bad shape. Wow. Led by a total clown.
The whole world will see November 4th too, and that's a chance to say, all right, we got it right.
This time, I hope.
I'm just saying it's a chance to say that, correct?
Right, then Annie writes in, Anna, I do agree with you, 2 sweaty old white men, and I'm a grandmother, but I care what my children and grandchildren are inheriting. What a choice. Just hope I live to see a progressive elected. Keep up the good commentary. Thank you, Annie. We appreciate your comment. We appreciate you being a member. And last one here is Grim writes in. I don't know if it's related to Ryan or not, but Grim writes in, oh, wow, I rarely come to this site. Hope I'm not related to Ryan or not actually Ryan Grim. Anyway, no, but let me read you the rest of it. He says, oh, wow, I rarely come to this site. They have a live chat with TYT homies. What's up, homies? Yes, we have a great live chat, minus the trolls. It's wonderful. Anyway, you're all members, so welcome. So, Michael, you did an interview in Cleveland where we just held a presidential debate. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I should set the scene too. Ordinarily, when we go to these debates, after the debate, there's a spin room. There's availability from both campaigns or the many campaigns during the primaries to speak to some of their surrogates, to speak to the candidates themselves. Not the case here because of COVID, but Tim Murtaugh, who is the communications director for the Trump reelect campaign, was over here, and I was able to, although he wasn't excited about answering a question, I was able to follow him to ask him a question that bothered me during the debate. Here's Tim Murtaugh. He's the communications director for Trump.
It was a dominating performance. He was in command of the entire situation every moment of the debate. And Joe Biden looked weak, unable to defend his 47 years of failure in Washington, unable to articulate a vision for the future. And he kept on looking around for help from the moderator and, I don't know, somebody in the crowd, anybody who could help him.
And the question about white supremacists and denouncing white supremacists, the president didn't really pounce on that one. Would you have liked that he answered that a little better?
The president has repeatedly denounced white supremacists. Just this past week, he declared the Ku Klux Klan a terrorist organization. The president has been absolutely clear on this. He has the best record for the African American community.
But tonight, sir, he wasn't perfectly clear. Would you in another debate say you should be clearer about that?
There is no ambiguity. The president has denounced repeatedly white supremacy. He declared the KKK a terrorist organization, something that Joe Biden has never done in 47 years in Washington.
Well, Joe, but Tim,
okay, Michael, I love it. Thank you for asking that question. You get in that answer the dichotomy between the professional Republicans who know how to prevaricate better and Donald Trump who doesn't. And they're constantly, basically apologizing for him after the fact. But we all heard it clear as day. Chris Wallace asked him arguably, well, actually not arguably, definitely a softball. Do you denounce white supremacists? It doesn't get any easier than that question. And Trump did not say yes. He kept asking for clarifications and he never said yes. What do you make of that answer, Michael?
I mean, in 2020, it is literally the easiest question that any presidential candidate, for any candidate at any office level in America, student body president, the easiest question to answer, and he didn't answer it when it was posed to him. And again, I don't know why this is problematic for him. And it speaks to the whole idea that he is afraid to drive a wedge with the extreme side of his party. But what he views as the extreme side of the Democratic Party, which is the progressive side, he's trying, and I think it's a terrible tactic, trying to drive a wedge between Democrats by getting Joe Biden to talk about being for the Green New Deal, being for defunding the police, things that Joe Biden, and being for Medicare for all, things that Joe Biden isn't for. And I think that they were all good answers on the part of Biden tonight politically as the nominee for the party to say that he's not for the Green New Deal. But here's the plan I have, and here's what you've done. I'm not for Medicare for all. Here's the plan I have. Here's what you've done. I'm not necessarily going to defund the police. Those are not my words. Here's the plan I have. Here's what you've done. He didn't perfectly articulate any of those plans, but rather than sort of hemming and hawing, he decisively answered those questions. And what we've proven now is that this election won't be won because of the idea that there's a wedge in the Democratic Party, which may have happened in 2016 or may not have. But I just think that Donald Trump sees a fear in his own party, and he's trying to project that onto Joe Biden. I think the answer you heard from Murtaugh there was pretty clear. You're right, Cenk. It shows you that Donald Trump is not a professional politician. The people around him are party apparatchiks still Republicans who are going to equivocate what he said.
Well, oftentimes Trump uses the fact that he's not a professional politician as advantage for him, because people don't like politicians. Of all the questions that Frank Luntz asked in his focus group after the debate, almost all of them were negative for Trump. In fact, the word crackhead stood out, which is amazing, unprecedented. As a description of Donald Trump, the current president of the United States. Right. But for Biden, the only one that was arguably significantly negative was politician, evasive, right? And so now at the same time, there's a reason why you give at least halfway rational answers and don't go full racist and go white supremacist. Haven't made up my mind yet. I'll get back to you. Right. And so I don't think the country, and we had this debate earlier, but I don't think the country is as racist as Donald Trump thinks it is. I think it's going to backfire on him. He's already got his base. He needs to expand beyond his base, and he's just not doing that. I do disagree with you, Michael, on his inability to drive a wedge between progressives and the rest of the party, because as I'm about to show you, I think he did. It bothered me greatly. It didn't bother me greatly enough that I would ever consider not getting Trump out of office. And the way you do that is to vote for Joe Biden. That's the realistic option right now. But when he when Biden loudly denounced Green New Deal and Medicare for all and defunding the police, I mean, not just defund but he said, I want to add money to the police, basically help the police. None of that made me like him any better. None of them that made me want to support him or get excited about him. And the only thing it did is make me think about who can primary him in 2024.
But let me interrupt you before you play what you're about to play. That's exactly what I'm saying, Cenk. What just happened, this dynamic, none of that did that. And that's why it's fine for Joe Biden to do that, because none of that got you to do that. And there's a wink and a nod with progressives now with Joe Biden to a degree. And it doesn't mean that there's not going to be a primary. It doesn't mean that this is exactly the candidate that they want. But if this is a referendum on Donald Trump, which I think we can all safely say to a great degree this election is, then that doesn't matter. And so you just proved the point I was making, because I don't think that any of those things are going to take people away. But if he does go in that direction, he's proven right now in a primary that those ideas specifically didn't win the primary. They came close and they're very popular within the party, but they didn't win the primary. Doing what he did won the primary. So he's not going to change course now, but I think as president, he's going to learn that he needs to go in a much more progressive direction. I think he is exactly the type of person who will do that, because he's a people pleaser, and that's exactly what he wants to do.
Anna, your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I just think that if Trump is going to attack Biden from the right, and then Biden's going to respond by giving right-wing answers, it's not going to play well with some portion of the Democratic voters. The only thing Biden really has working for him right now is that Trump is so unbelievably awful that people want him out, and that's where I'm at. That's not a glowing endorsement of Joe Biden. I think the fact that Biden wants to fund police more without having like a comprehensive answer about what needs to be done to reform policing before more funding is funneled to police is an issue. And I'll say this, right? Like, we need to consider the fact that he needs to give people a reason to like go out of their way to vote. And right now, especially with this election, you would need to go out of your way. If you're gonna vote in person, especially in a swing state, you're gonna deal with armed Trump people who are gonna show up to those polls with the very intention of intimidating individuals who wanna vote. And so are people gonna wanna put themselves in that situation in order to cast their ballots for Biden? And so his campaign just needs to be a little more about what he's gonna do to improve the lives of people, outside of just getting rid of an awful incumbent president like Donald Trump. That's where I'm at with it.
If I could just respond to Anna, I don't disagree with what Anna's saying. I think his presidency has to be about that. I don't think it's necessary for his campaign at this point of the campaign to be about that. It's defined who Joe Biden is, and it's also defined who he isn't. And I think that the Democrats have chosen their horse for this race, and they are banking on sort of outrage and fatigue. And I do think, and I mentioned this maybe earlier here, but I think that if Trump fatigue is a real thing, I know that it's a real thing. I think 2018 proved that it was a real thing. If it's a real thing, then this was, and this is what I tweeted it, that this is peak Trump fatigue. And when you are at peak Trump fatigue, I think you play it carefully. You guys, and I understand the passion behind it, may think that playing it carefully isn't the right thing. I think the presidency has to be about more than that. I think getting there is Joe Biden's job, and I think he's doing it okay.
I'm curious what John thinks, but look, I'll just say real quick, it might work this time because they're up against, as the focus group said, a crackhead. But it didn't work last time. Being really, really careful and cautious and timid got us Trump in the first place.
That was a personality thing, though, Jake. That was also
no.
There were so
the problem, Michael, in the long run is that the Democrats never make their case. In fact, and Biden did it again tonight. Oh, you're right about Green New Deal being too far left. You're right about Medicare for all. You're right about defunding the police. And in the long term, what that does is it does damage to your brand and people's perception of, are you strong? Do you believe what you stand for? And do you stand for anything? And I think that does more damage in the long run. Yes, but the short run in this particular case is so massively important that we'll all get beyond it for the moment being. But then how much damage does that do in the long run is what I'm saying.
And I was only talking about it in the context of tonight's debate. I wasn't talking about it as a blueprint for the future for the party. I think in the context of tonight's debate and the 40 days that are left in this race, I think we're all on the same page here.
John.
Yeah, look, I think in terms of some of the policy, he didn't seem overly eager to delve into his plans. And to be fair to him, I guess, even if that is what he wanted, this was clearly not an environment that was going to make that easy. Trump was obviously talking over him. But one of the things that I think he did that sort of unnecessarily hurt him insofar as his ability for these debates to serve to broaden his appeal to those on the left is, like when he was talking about climate change, a lot of what he had to say was pretty good. He talked about the fact that we're not gonna have any more coal-fired power plants and things like that. He went into some of the details there, but then he expressed himself like, no, I don't support the Green New Deal. Why not say, I support the vast majority of the spirit of the Green New Deal? He could pitch it in a better way. I feel like sometimes, maybe because the pressure's on him and Trump is goading him, like he feels like he has to show how little respect he has for this side of the party, when he could be talking about the fact that he had this commission on dealing with the climate crisis. And a good number of people that I trust quite a bit on that came out of it thinking that Joe Biden is probably going to be persuadable on these issues. He could talk about that, but sometimes I feel like, I don't know if it's because he thinks that saying this is going to win him Republicans or it's just a spur of the moment thing. He doesn't realize what signals he's sending. He sort of unnecessarily pokes his thumb in the eyes of leftists that he does still need to support him in his presidency. Not in any way implying that I'm not going to. We're, the horse is jumping the chasm right now. We just have to hope that it sticks the landing. But just some of those moments just didn't have to happen, I think.
Yeah, and there's one thing that is clear to me, and I think should be clear to everybody, which is that Trump and the Republican Party love their base. And you could argue, and I would argue, that Trump overdoes it by thinking that his base is all white supremacists and saying, I refusing to denounce white supremacists. But the Democrats make the opposite mistake, where they never cater to their base. In fact, they go out of their way to insult their base as often as possible. In the long run, that does untold damage.
Well, one base is far more homogeneous than the other, and I think that is, that's fact. And I know what you're saying too, Cenk. But at the same time, I don't think there is any base abandonment going on here. I think everybody knows what Joe Biden has to do with the smart politics of it, not in terms of the campaign politics of it, the electoral politics versus the smart politics of when he, if he wins, when he is a president. So I do think that getting there and once you're there and what you do are two very different things. And I think I think many people will see that with Joe Biden. I think it's very smart to do what he did tonight personally from just purely winning this race. I don't think it's about winning Republicans over. I don't think you win Republicans over. I think that's a fallacy. There's some who don't like voting for Trump and they're going to vote for Biden in ways that they wouldn't vote for Clinton last time. But I do think that there are people who don't like the labels in politics and are afraid of the word socialist and buy into some of what the president is selling. And if they see it denounced, it might help. I think many minds are made up already, though.
Okay, so I promise you one true thing that Donald Trump said. He said, look, I took advantage of a tax law that you and Obama wrote. That was true. So Obama administration created a loophole after the Great Recession. They justified it by saying we need rich people to have more money so that they could stimulate the economy. So we're gonna allow you to write off expenses from over 2 years ago, even if they have nothing to do with your current expenses. And Trump jumped into that and wrote off expenses that he had from his many bankruptcies. Now, the reality is Trump still cheated in that case. And that's why the IRS then sued to get the money back, because he couldn't help himself. He didn't abide by the letter of the law. And what he did, if not bordering on tax evasion, is tax evasion. And we'll sort that out legally after the election, I hope. But it is true that Obama created that loophole. And in fact, the reason why the IRS gave him the $72 million they're trying to take back now is because part of the law was the IRS must give people the money based on faith within 90 days. And so that was a terrible mistake. And that's what allowed Trump to basically steal $72 million from US taxpayers. Now, of course, he left out that second part, but the first part about Obama creating that law was true. Michael, I know you got to clear out
just one thing on that, and one thing that if I were Biden that I would do next time is sort of talk about how the vice president doesn't have anything to do with what the policy of the presidency is. And I think we all know that, and I think that he could challenge and talk about Mike Pence in that way. I wouldn't say nothing, but I do think that there, when you talk about taxation, that's an Obama legacy, not necessarily a Biden legacy.
I hear you on that. On the other hand, he takes credit for a lot of things.
For sure, no, absolutely. But I'm just talking about what you can do and get away with, and he didn't do enough of the other. But you're right. He owns everything good that happened under Obama, but he doesn't fight back at everything that's labeled as a bad thing to come out of that administration and tie him to it. But that's just little stuff.
Right, and then now I don't want you to get the wrong impression, because I told you basically this is our fact check. We found one true thing Trump said. Almost everything else was a lie, and it's not an exaggeration. I mean, when he got into mail-in ballots, I mean, it was outlandish. All these military votes are thrown in the garbage because they said Trump on it. Why would a mail-in ballot write Trump on the outside? That makes no sense, right? They found all these ballots in the creek. What creek? What are you talking about, you lunatic? And then
the Billion Tree Project, I Googled it afterwards. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. Right. Of
course.
At his State of the Union, Anna, he introduced a trillion tree project. So it's been cut from a trillion to a billion, and none of it exists. So.
Well, there is the Trillion Tree campaign, which doesn't have anything to do with him.
Totally different. It's international, right? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, and I mean, I'm going to do a plug for a sponsor just because it's perfect. There actually is a campaign by Aspiration and they've already planted 2 million trees. So we'll only pick sponsors that are actually progressive and wonderful. So that's why I say you should put your money where your heart is and go with folks who are actually trying to do good in the world. So aspiration.com/TYT. They've already planted 2 million trees. Every time you sign up, they plant 10 trees. You could round up to plant more trees. That's a real program, as opposed to Trump making up nonsense, right? And then finally, he said already 30 to 40% of the mail-in votes are fraudulent. How do you know? Right. And if they are, why didn't you arrest them? You're the president. I mean, what are you talking about? 30 to 40%? Right. That is so outlandish. It's not anywhere near 3 to 4% historically, let alone 30 to 40%. But on top of that, how would you even know? And if you did know, why didn't you do something about it?
Of course, those are the seeds he's planting for what happens after the election. They're not tree seeds. All right, guys, I'm being kicked out, so I got to go.
All right, thank you, Michael. I like security removing Michael in the middle of the show in Cleveland. Okay, that's what you get for asking the communications director for Trump tough questions. But overall, the unbelievable lies from Donald Trump. I don't know if the fact checkers can debunk dozens, maybe even he might have crossed 100 in the lies that he said tonight.
Can I list one more of the things that I think Biden really failed with an opportunity for? Was we knew that the New York Times report was going to come out and that was going to be a big thing. And there's everything that you've said about how he could have harped more on the fact that there's this elitist who's getting away with paying nothing, all of that stuff, all of that is true. But another big failure was that a reasonable person who hasn't read the 10,000 word long New York Times article could come out of that debate thinking what Trump did is extreme but legal, when that is not what you should take away from that article. There are a number of different avenues in that article that the New York Times is going to be expanding on the near future that very much moves into the territory of things that are likely actually illegal. The paying off of his kids as contractors, he did that. That's not in a tax bill. He's not supposed to do that. The 7-seaters investment property that's just a place they live in, that is probably tax fraud. The fact that some of his properties, the operating expenses quintupled from one year to the next, that's not just a totally cool legal thing that he did. There's so much here that is clearly not just the normal rich get to abuse the system sort of thing. He appears to have in multiple cases gone way beyond the law to commit actual tax fraud. But if you 100%. Were just watching this debate, you wouldn't come away with that impression. You'd think, he didn't spend enough.
100%, you're so right. John, you're so right. That was one other thing, and I'm glad that you brought this up. Yeah, you committed tax fraud, period. That's it. $72 million refund. He got a $72 million refund from the IRS. That's what he's being audited for. I mean, I would say audited for right now, but that audit has been paused because he's the president. He committed tax fraud. Why didn't Biden say it? Just say it. Well, working class Americans in this country have dutifully paid their taxes. You got a tax refund to the tune of $72 million because you committed tax fraud based on what your own former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, said under oath while testifying before the House. Period, that's all you have to say. Anyway, it's just, God, it's so disappointing that we're in the place that we're at right now with this weak ass candidate who doesn't even remember the line of attack to use against this target rich environment. Great, awesome, most electable president. Because why? Because Democrats are so feckless and so pathetic that they would rather appeal to like the 2% of never Trump Republicans that run the Lincoln Project while giving the middle finger to progressive voters. Great, we'll see how that works out for you. I hope he wins because Trump is a disaster. But they're taking a giant risk right now with, again, a weak candidate who consistently gets pushed further to the right by Donald Trump. Donald Trump should be laughed at on that stage. Biden should laugh at him, and every time Trump tries to pull him to the right, he should laugh more and talk about why his policies would be better, why progressive policies would be better, why Medicare for all, if he actually supported it, would actually cover every single American in this country right now during this pandemic, when tens of millions of Americans were laid off and as a result were kicked off of their private health insurance. But Biden can't do that because he's a corporate sellout. And he's unfortunately the better of two evils, the less evil of two evils that we're stuck with for this election at a time when everyone's telling us, oh, this is the most important election of our lifetimes. They're right, it is. And unfortunately, we have a shitty option. And he showed how weak he was on that debate stage. Sorry, I know I'm a little fired up, but I'm just so sick of being stuck in the same position over and over again. And for all the people who think that a third party is the answer, no, it's not. Third party is gonna go nowhere. Give me some real solutions. So that's where I'm at.
The real solution is we have to find a progressive champion to run in 2024 immediately. Because whoever it is gonna need 3 years to build up honestly, brand name recognition, positive branding, and get the American people to know them and to find a way around the mainstream media. Because the mainstream media not only will not cover them, but they will be furious if they primary Biden or Harris. So we got to get going right away. I don't have an easy answer. John, did you say you have an easy answer? I'm looking forward to it.
Can I say one thing? Just sorry, John. Okay, just one thing. If we put our support behind a progressive, I want a progressive who has a long inventory, huge inventory of brass knuckles. No more of this weak shit, okay? I want brass knuckles. And that's what I want. I don't want any more of this weak equivocating bullshit. Okay, go ahead, John.
I got someone who's got that too. What else do you need? AOC's got it, and I think that AOC has got to be the person. I'm not saying that AOC will be the person. I don't know if AOC is going to be ready to be the person, but on all of these things, I'm assuming, I'm not going to speak for all of you. I think for our main criteria for what a candidate needs to be able to accomplish, and more importantly, what a president needs to be able to both accomplish and prioritize, I think that she leads that group by a good bit.
I think the two most critical elements are authenticity and passion. So let's see if we can find that. Okay, so last thing, I know we're out of time, but we promised it, so I want to do it. What do we think of the moderator? I might surprise you guys, but I want John to lead.
I think that Chris Wallace, every time he did his little almost like Jim Halpert smile at the camera, isn't this ridiculous thing? I wanted to be like, dude, you're working right now, go do your job. Now, maybe you don't have the capacity, the actual technological capacity to cut his mic. You should have, because you should have known that Donald Trump was gonna do this thing. How could you have set this up where you're gonna try to appeal to his humanity, him being reasonable? I'm gonna ask you to not interrupt. No, he's gonna keep doing that. He's gonna keep doing it for literally hours, and you're gonna allow him to. You're gonna occasionally do the thing where you say, now you're gonna really like this next question, like you're trying to get a kid to eat a vegetable or something. That was kind of funny, I like that. But no, he just sort of went along with it, and he apparently decided about 16 minutes in, I can't stop him from doing it, so why even bother trying? I'm gonna occasionally imply that he should stop, but I'm not gonna force it. I'm not gonna penalize him in literally any way. And because, yes, he's a Republican who doesn't seem to like Donald Trump, but he's still a Republican. It wasn't just that he let Trump steamroll Biden, it's that he also was framing basically issue from a right-wing point of view. Like we can't get it twisted that just because he asked Trump hard questions, he is still a right-wing conservative. And so the combination of those things, it was a mess, but not just because of Trump. You don't get mad at the baby for pooping his pants when the parents fed it chili. You're responsible too. And he was pumping him full of chili the whole time. You should have cut him off, but you didn't. So stop laughing and do your job, because the stakes are kind of high here.
So John, I actually disagree a little bit, but I don't think it matters anyway, because you already won the night with the chili line. So, yeah. But nonetheless, I'll say, look, I've been in debates and I've moderated debates, and that was unmoderatable. And so the only way to get Trump under control there would have been to yell nearly at the top of your lungs and say, no, you will not speak past 2 minutes, right? But then you look
Wait, Cenk. Okay, so look, I will grant you that they apparently couldn't cut the mic. Is it crazy to say in future debates they should have the capacity to cut the mic? They did it in the Democratic primary debates. And talk to Andrew Yang.
I think they should. I absolutely think they should. Trump is going to keep doing this. And by the way, I think Chris Wallace was a disaster. I'm going to go further than John. I absolutely hated every single time he was like, "Oh, Trump, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. Oh, Trump, you're going to love this." Who cares what Trump is going to love? Okay, you're the moderator. How about don't be so considerate of Donald Trump and his feelings. Ask the tough questions of both candidates. And when Trump is interrupting, shut him up. Find a way to shut him up. That's your job as a moderator. But Chris Wallace was like giggling about it. It was super frustrating.
I hear you, Anna, but like he was doing it out of unbelievable frustration. But Chris Wallace has been in media for a long time and he's a Fox News host. The rest of the moderators left have got to be sweating bullets. Because they are actually not anywhere near as forceful as Chris Wallace. Chris Wallace is actually one of the more forceful guys on TV. Wait till you see what Trump does to those moderators. So I think maybe that you guys are right that the only option they're gonna have is to be able to cut the mic. Because if they can't cut the mic, you're gonna see in future debates, Trump is gonna be worse than this. Now, the opposite argument to not cutting the mic and just letting them do what they do is Trump got killed according to the polling. He did disastrously in this debate. And so he showed his true self and people didn't like it. So, I keep going back to this because it's so amazing. Frank Luntz is the top Republican pollster. He did a focus group. One of the words that stuck out about Trump was crackhead. It's unreal. I mean, I've never seen that in a debate from any politician, let alone the president of the United States. So crackhead's gonna crackhead. And if the moderator lets him do that in a sense, well, he's exposed him for who he is. But I really thought that was a completely unmanageable debate. I thought Chris Wallace was as forceful as he could have been. He raised his voice, he interrupted, he chided Trump on a number of occasions. I do agree with John that the questions are always from a right-wing perspective. But honestly, John, whether it's Chris Wallace or another mainstream media person, it doesn't really matter. They all frame it from a right-wing perspective, right? And so the last thing I'll give Wallace credit for is the white supremacist question was good because Trump's nuts and he might not denounce white supremacists, and he didn't, so that was a good question. But more important, I don't know if it's more important, but a better question was when he said to him, okay, you think mail-in ballots is deeply fraudulent, and Trump said 30 to 40% of mail-in ballots are fraudulent, which is unbelievable. So Chris Wallace said, you're president right now. What are you gonna do about it? And that's what I've been saying on the show. So I was like, a Fox News host said it, right? That's the perfect question. If you're not full of crap and you actually think an enormous percentage of votes are fraudulent, and we're more than a month away from the election, you can do something about it. You can actually say, oh, okay, here's the evidence for how it's fraudulent, and here's what we're gonna do about it, instead of just setting up this as one giant excuse for you to try to cheat later, and then when you lose, cry like a baby and claim that you didn't actually lose. And when he asked that question, Trump had no answer at all. He just kept saying, it's unfair, it's ridiculous, it's unfair. And Wallace repeated a couple of times, okay, then what are you going to do? But Trump has this problem overall, which is he doesn't realize he's president. He just keeps complaining about the state of the country. He keeps complaining about his own officials. He did in other parts of the debate as well. And of course, he famously said about coronavirus, I take no responsibility at all. And that does summarize Trump pretty well, and Wallace did get that out of him. But nonetheless, apparently I'm outvoted 2-1. and John did have the chili line. So sorry, Chris Wallace. Apparently, you didn't pass the test.
Yeah, Wallace sucks. Okay, so real quick, I wanna close our show, unless there's anything else you guys want to add with Chelsea Christina's Twitter thread about us as hosts and what our personalities are like on this show. I'm not a big zodiac sign type person, but I actually think she's right in how she described us. So let me go ahead and read the thread. The comment about Cenk, the optimist, Ana, the pessimist, and John, the realist, is so true and so on brand for their zodiac signs. Cenk, of course, is an Aries, Ana, the embodiment of a Cancer, and John, a true Aquarius. Ana Kasparian, Cancer, stuck between either caring too much or not wanting to care at all. Highly intuitive, sensitive to the environment, moody, pessimistic, and fiercely protective. Totally on brand, yes. Cenk Uygur has a big mouth, but will use it to stick up for you. Aggressive, feisty, slightly childlike, passionate, motivated, optimistic, and all-around confident leader who builds community with their cheerful disposition and relentless determination. Totally 100% true. And then John, Aquarius. An Aquarian simply knows, intelligent, humanitarian. Stubborn, I disagree with. You're definitely not a stubborn person. Analytical, a true free spirit, loves learning about anything and everything, creative with some unusual hobbies, independent, and a total realist.
Okay.
I Chelsea, thank you. I really like that thread.
I love that, yeah.
Yeah, so guys, I don't believe in zodiac signs at all, at least until tonight, because that nailed it.
It did nail it.
So, and look, that's a little self-aggrandizing because my description was kind of awesome. What do you mean, a little childlike? A lot childlike. Anyways, but that was weirdly appropriate. Like, cause I always think with zodiac signs, yeah, but if you read it for the other one for you, you can make it sound like it's kind of you too, right? No, Anna's sign didn't match mine at all, right? Mine's sign didn't match Anna's or John's, right? And John, I mean, that's his main thing, analytical, etc. So anyway, Chelsea, thank you. That was brilliantly done. And that's why we love doing the show with the members and with our viewers. That's why we say we're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks. Love you guys. Okay. On that note, we got a great show tomorrow, as you all know, because you're members, 6 p.m. Eastern. I actually have some great interviews at 5:30 I want you to check out, including James Thompson. He was a Just Democrat. 2 miracles for the price of 1. You'll see what I mean in the interview. And then I interviewed a journalist.
And John Show, Damage Report.
Hold on, I'm getting to it. And I interviewed a former ABC White House correspondent about a podcast she's doing about Jeffrey Epstein. Man, it was chilling. So check that out at 5:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And guys, Damage Report, 10 a.m. Pacific every day. It's amazing. And one of these days, there's even going to be a Damage Report shirt.
Someday. Someday.
But meanwhile,
wait, I'm hearing that they just made a shirt about that interaction.
Will you shut up, man? Apparently there's a shirt on shoptyt.com. Sorry, John, what were you saying?
Nothing, it was a joke. Anyway, we look forward to it someday. Dragon Squad is waiting.
Dragon Squad, all right, I love it. And by the way, use the code BUHBYE, BUHBYE, to buy that resistance gear. I don't like to call it resistance, but anything involved in voting or being anti-Trump. So check that out. All right, see you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.